Hey everybody, my name is Lyle and welcome to the channel. So we have a reaction from the Fat Electrician. This one is the Ghost of World War II, Matt Urban. So I thought this was an interesting title. I've never heard of Matt Urban. So let's jump in. Let's have a look at this one.
Everybody knows about Audie Murphy, but nobody knows about this guy who arguably has more military decorations than him.
Huh?
Today we're talking about Matt Urban, aka The Ghost. I know what you're thinking. How do you acquire the nickname The Ghost? I'll give you a hint. It's because he has 7 purple hearts.
Oh my God.
The man was legitimately unkillable. He was once read his last rites on the battlefield by a priest after the surgeon said that he was for sure going to die. He then proceeded to survive, get shipped off to England, recover in the hospital, where he then escaped from the hospital, made his way back across an ocean, and hitchhiked to the front lines of World War II to rejoin his men. And that is one of the 2 times.
What the heck? Okay, this is gonna be a wild story. Already can tell.
And hitchhiked to the front lines of World War II to rejoin his men. And that is one of the 2 times that he escaped from the hospital to return to his men in frontline combat.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off.
In addition to his 7 purple hearts, he also has the Medal of Honor, the Legion of Merit, 2 silver stars, 3 bronze stars with V device, and the French Croix de Guerre. As an infantryman, he has a confirmed kill against an enemy fighter plane. He also has 2 confirmed kills on enemy tanks that he took out by himself on foot. He once participated in an amphibious landing, which to be fair, doesn't really sound that impressive until I tell you that he didn't do it in a Higgins boat like everybody else. Him and his new buddy Al Shellbach made the amphibious landing by themselves inside of a fucking rowboat for reasons that we're gonna get into right after a word from our sponsor.
Delete me.
Showing off your chesty again?
My what?
Your Mustang armament chesty.
Oh, yeah. I got something so it's kind of quiet for kids' is nap time.
Yeah, where did you get a suppressor? You can't just buy those.
Don't worry about it.
What? No, I have to worry about it. It's like legalities and stuff, Hannah.
It's like that Lil Wayne quote.
Little Wayne quote. Real G's move in silence like lasagna? You're a housewife. All right, you guys know the deal. Delete me. Online subscription model. You give them money every month. They turn around and make sure that data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. What does this actually do in practice? It gets rid of your personal info, isn't just floating around the internet for anybody to be able to buy for a couple of bucks. Okay, I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing. I don't want to give Delete Me all my personal information either. I'm trying to get my personal information off the internet. Why would I give it to an internet company? You don't really have to give them your personal information. It's honestly kind of creepy. I gave them my name and my email address, and that was it. They came back to me a couple days later and was like, is this your address or one of your previous addresses? It was. Is this your mom's full name? Uh-huh. Is that your dad's full name? Uh-huh. Are you related to this person? Did you go to this high school? They knew everything about me and knew exactly who I was just by me giving them my name and my email. All I had to do was answer a couple of yes or no questions as to whether or not that was in fact me, which it was, at which point they're like, cool, go ahead, pay for our subscription service. We'll go to all the data brokers where we found this information and force them to delete it. And as long as you keep being a paying member, they will continue to monitor all these data brokers for your personal information, and if these data brokers do acquire it again, they will force them to delete it again. In my opinion, it's definitely worth it. I've been using them since before they were paying me to talk about them, and I'm gonna keep using them after they quit paying me to talk about them. If you want to give it a try, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. Okay, here's the deal. This dude has a ton of war stories. We are just going to speed run the early life portion of this video. Our story begins on August 25th, 1919, when Matt Urban is born in Buffalo, New York. He is the youngest brother, and all of his brothers are track stars. One of his older brothers actually goes on to be an Olympic qualifier that competes against Jesse Owens. Other than being track stars, pretty normal childhood. Dad's a plumber, mom's a stay-at-home mom, grew up in the 1920s, 1930s. They all have the same childhood. We've heard this story 15 times. We're not going to rehash it. Fast forward, Matt Urban goes to Cornell University. He's running on the cross-country team, and he's working 5 part-time jobs to pay for tuition. Apparently, he wasn't busy enough, so he decides to go out for the boxing team as well, and due to his outstanding endurance from being a track star, and as well as just being a natural athlete, he excels at boxing. He's able to box equally as good, conventional and southpaw, and he rapidly becomes known as the one-man boxing team because he competes for Cornell at 165 pounds, 175 pounds, and heavyweight. He's so good that to get him to compete at heavyweight, they had to stick lead weights inside inside of his trunks so that he would make weight. Despite that, he becomes a champion in all 3 weight classes. His junior year of college, it becomes pretty obvious that America at some point is going to be entering World War II, and he's going to get drafted, so he figures, hell, I'm just going to go ahead and join the ROTC program right now and start training, so that's exactly what he does. He then goes on to graduate college in 1941, immediately gets commissioned as an officer in the United States Army, becoming an infantry officer in the 9th Infantry Division stationed at Fort Bragg. From here, pretty standard stuff. He's a platoon leader, training up his infantry guys, getting ready for the war that they know is coming, but Matt's a workaholic, so he also volunteers to be the regiment's morale officer, where he goes and starts a basketball team and a boxing team for the 9th Infantry Division. And from here, that's what he's doing for months. He's doing infantry training during the day, he's being a boxing coach at night, and this just keeps going on and on and on with no break in sight. And then finally, in December of 1941, he finally gets a weekend pass. So obviously, he goes out to the bar on December 7th, 1941. As soon as he gets in there, he gets halfway through his beer, sitting on a bar stool at the bar, and the radio cuts in with an urgent announcement. The bar gets quiet, the bartender turns up the radio, and that's when Matt hears that America has been attacked by Japan at Pearl Harbor, crippling our Pacific fleet, killing thousands of Americans. All weekend passes are revoked, and all troops are ordered back to their outfits. From here, obviously, training ramps up as they get ready to go off to war. Fast forward almost a year of training later, it is October of 1942 when the 60th Infantry Division, including Matt Urban, get told, load up on the boat. And they're like, where are we going? And they're like, get your ass on the boat. So they load up on the USS Florence Nightingale and they set sail. Wherever they're going is apparently so secretive that they're not going to tell them until they get there. Now, on one hand, that's great for OPSEC, you know, operational security. You don't want to be telling the whole world where you're going to be going and launching a major attack in World War II. But on the other hand, it's pretty demoralizing for a military, especially one that has a significant amount of people that were drafted and didn't volunteer to be there. The entire notion of get your ass on the boat, we're going to ship you off to war and we're not even going to tell you where, kind of a mentally draining type of a thing. Because of this, understandably, morale on the USS Florence Nightingale, pretty low. Everybody's kind of in a bad mood. There's this rift happening between the officers and the enlisted. The enlisted guys are coming to resent the officers because we're all going off to war together and you guys aren't telling us what we're actually doing. Fuck you guys. So Matt Urban steps up. He's the morale officer, right? It's his job to keep morale high. He's got to give these guys something to focus on besides the fact that we're going off to war in places unknown. So he heads off to the supply room, grabs some rope and some duct tape. He ends up marking off a 20-foot by 20-foot section right there on the deck of the USS Florence Nightingale and making a boxing ring. He then proceeds to walk away, goes up the stairs. He's standing on the deck on the control tower and just watches and waits. And sure enough, within 15 minutes, a crowd has amassed and people are having boxing matches right there on the deck of the Florence Nightingale. Everybody's laughing, they're gambling, they're having a good time. His plan worked great. This is a humongous boost to morale. Then things go a little bit sideways because the next natural progression happens. Everybody wants to know who's the best at boxing. So then it turns into, we're going to have boxing matches, and if you win, you stay inside the boxing ring. They're having 3-round matches. Guys are getting rotated in and out as they win or lose, and then eventually this one guy comes in, one big dude named Al Shellbach. Apparently, he was a professional heavyweight boxer, and he proceeds to get in the ring, and nobody's able to get him out. He's knocking out absolutely everybody. At which point, it turns into everybody's going to pitch in money, and whoever can actually knock Al Shellbach out of the ring is going to get this huge pot of cash. People try. Nobody can do it. He knocks out absolutely everybody, and it gets to the point that he's run out of people volunteering to get in that ring to box him, at which point he starts yelling and boasting. He's pretty upset that he's on this ship, doesn't want to be going off to war, so he starts talking shit to the officers, yelling to the crowd that is amassed around him, saying he wants to fight an officer now. At which point Matt Urban is sitting up on this balcony like, ah, shit, this might have been a bad idea. At which point, Al Shellbach looks up at the balcony, makes direct eye contact with Matt Urban, and then proceeds to say, and I quote, "Hey you, punk lieutenant, yeah, in the peanut gallery, I dare you. Show us how gutless you officers are."
Uh-oh.
Yep, this is a mistake. Matt Urban has just backed himself into a corner because on one hand, this is the 1940s. Officers and enlisted are not supposed to be commingling or intermingling. He can't go down there as a officer and a gentleman and box an enlisted soldier because that would, you know, be against their code of ethics and the standards and blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, if he doesn't do it, just being a man, like, how are you going to lead these men into combat if you're not willing to go down there and show them that you also know how to fight? So he's got this predicament and he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go down there. He starts walking down from the balcony. As he's coming down the stairs, he's taking his top off shirtless, and the crowd is going fucking nuts because Al Shellbach is about to knock out a lieutenant. What they don't know is that Matt Urban is also a heavyweight boxing champion, so they go in there and have this 3-round fight, and they beat the shit out of each other the entire time, but nobody gets knocked out, and it gets ruled a draw. At which point, Al Shellbach gives him a big hug. They raise each other's hands, tells him he's not like all the other officers. He is now a hero among all of the enlisted men, and him and Al Shellbach just became homies forever.
You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
So this actually turned out pretty all right. Turned out pretty awesome. And then reality kicks in because the commanding officer yells down from the balcony that Urban needs to get his ass up here. Urban goes up there, then proceeds to get his ass chewed for boxing enlisted men, you know, because that's not gentlemanly. He then proceeds to put both Urban and Shellbach on kitchen duty together for the rest of their trip. So they're peeling potatoes together, cooking food for the next couple of weeks, just hanging out pretty much all day. They become even better buddies. And then about 2-3 weeks in, early November, they have an officers meeting. Al Shellbach sneaks in with Urban, not a big deal. And they're sitting in this meeting and they basically break it down like, okay, we're off the coast of North Africa. This is Operation Torch. This is America's main invasion into North Africa. And the 9th Infantry Division is tasked with taking over Port Lyautey, which is being guarded by an old French fort known as Casaba. They need to make a landing on the beach and go take that fort to take over this port. And if that wasn't hard enough, that fort is occupied by the French Foreign Legion. And I know what you're thinking, isn't France on America's side? Kind of, sort of, not really at this point, because the French Foreign Legion has taken orders from Vichy France, which is occupied by the Germans, so the Americans are going to be fighting the French, and the French Foreign Legion at this point, and really at all points, including modern time, it's kind of a legendary military unit.
Let's just start with the French Foreign Legion. They are tough, they are hard, and they are willing to die rather than surrender.
And Matt Urban's platoon is slotted in the first wave to hit the beach. Matt Urban's heart jumps. He's absolutely pumped, and as soon as he gets that adrenaline hit, the commanding officer looks at Matt Urban and says, but not you, because you're the morale officer. Remember, we're going to need you for after the battle to boost everybody's morale. You're keeping your ass right here on the ship, and so's your potato peeling buddy. At which point, Urban and Shellbach look at each other and telepathically communicate, that's not fucking happening.
No, I understand that. You're being very serious right now.
I can clearly see you winking.
That night, Shellbach and Urban go. They get a life raft. They get their guns. They get ammo. They get grenades. They get everything they need to go off to battle. They get them in the life raft, throw it over the side of the ship, tie it off, get a rope ready to rappel down. They are going to go join this battle by themselves if they have to.
Jesus.
The next morning, Operation Torch gets underway. They initiate the amphibious landing. The Higgins boats are making their way towards the beach, and right out of the gate, it is an enormous shit show. The enemy is somehow using artillery accurately, very accurately, too accurately for what is supposed to be happening. And the casualty reports just keep coming in, and they are horrific. At which point, Urban and Shellbach look at each other, they nod, they slip out, and they start lowering themselves down into this life raft. They get into this life raft, they start rowing their asses off. The commanding officer runs down to the deck and is screaming at Matt Urban, where the fuck are you going? Get your ass back here. And Matt Urban's just like, nope. And they just keep rowing right into the gunfire and artillery fire and explosions headed towards the beach. The closer they get to the beach, the more horrific a sight they see. There's just more and more dead bodies floating in the water. There's guys that drowned because the Higgins boats opened their doors too soon and they went in with full kit and didn't make it. There's guys that have been shot, blown up. It's horrific. They managed to rescue a couple of guys that were stranded out in the water, and while this is happening, unbeknownst to them, the Americans had figured out why the artillery fire was so accurate, and it's because the Vichy French had a bunch of guys up inside of a lighthouse overlooking the beach, and were using that as a vantage point to call in accurate artillery fire. Fortunately for Matt Urban, and unfortunately for everybody in that lighthouse, once the Americans figured out that that's where the forward observers are, they radioed over to the most gangster battleship of all time, the USS Texas, which was also right there, and told them to delete that fucking lighthouse, which they did. Okay, that's life. 1 second you're French, you're fancy, you're in a lighthouse, you're eating a baguette with your homies, it's romantic, you're calling in artillery fire on the invading American swan.
I'm sorry, eating the baguette with your homies. Come on now.
Eating a baguette with your homies, it's romantic, you're calling in artillery fire on the invading American swine, and then the USS Texas just starts lobbing 1,500-pound freedom suppositories at your structure, and then you wake up dead.
How the hell do you wake up dead?
Because you're alive when you go to sleep.
Matt finally makes it to the beach. All the men have already advanced like 100 yards further. He's running, trying to catch up to him. He's dodging gunfire. There's bullets whizzing past him. He gets about halfway there and he sees that there's some private laying down inside of a crater, huddled up, not knowing what the fuck to do. He dives into this crater. This kid's freaked out, doesn't know what the fuck to do. He's having a panic attack. It's Private First Class Grabski. It's a kid from his platoon. He grabs him, get the fuck up and let's go. And they continue to advance towards the objective. He almost makes it to the spot where the men are pinned down in front of him, and then a humongous artillery explosion happens right in front of him where those men were. He dives to the ground with the private, and rolling up next to him comes a human head.
Oh.
Worse than that, it's an American human head, and it's a human head of somebody that he recognizes, Lieutenant Goodwin, one of the other lieutenants from one of the other platoons in the 60th Infantry Regiment. And for a brief moment, Matt Urban gets extremely upset, and that rapidly turns into anger and adrenaline, at which point he stands to his feet with zero regard for himself and rushes towards the enemy bunker that is pinning down the men in front of him. He hurtles over his men hiding for cover straight towards this bunker, and before they can shoot him down, he throws a grenade into this pillbox, blows it up, and then clears it with his rifle. And as the men behind him start to stand up, realizing, oh shit, we're rushing the position, he immediately advances to the next pillbox and clears it as well, completely by himself. Seeing this, the rest of the men jump into action, and the American forces manage to clear out all of the pillboxes and trenches surrounding this French Fort Casaba. Now the Americans basically have this fort surrounded. There's no way that they can break in. They don't have tanks. They don't have any heavy artillery yet. All they have is small arms and grenades, and this French fort has these massive doors, humongous thick stone walls. They have no way to break in there to fight them. And from here, it turns into like a pitched siege warfare for the next 3 days. The French will open the doors, try to launch a counterattack. The Americans mow them down, and they're just kind of stuck there waiting for one side to give up. And in between these counterattacks, there's just these huge lulls. And by the end of the first day, Matt Urban remembers sitting down inside of a trench, watching the sunset, thinking to himself, this place is beautiful. This is not somewhere where you're supposed to be fighting a war. Next day, same thing, pitched battle. There's counterattacks here and there, but between there's just hours of these huge lulls where everybody's kind of sitting around, eating food, doing nothing. Eventually, the French launch a massive counterattack as the doors to the fortress open and 3 French tanks roll out and immediately get blown up with bazookas. They immediately shut the doors again, and now everybody's just kind of sitting there in a lull. By the third day, they're having logistical issues. They're not getting enough food and water to the front to feed the men. Everybody's getting hungry. They're getting thirsty. They want to end this shit, and they want to end it now. And there's not really a great tactful way to go about that, so they're going to rely on good old-fashioned brute force and ignorance to get it done.
It's good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. Yeah. Let's start building some hurting bombs.
They grab all the bazookas and bazooka shells that they have. They send a group around to the rear gate. They're at the front gate, and they coordinate a time, and they just start shooting fucking bazookas at the gates until they break them off their fucking hinges and swarm the entire fort.
Dang.
Matt Urban and the 9th Infantry Division's next battle takes place in Tunisia, where Erwin Rommel, the legendary German tank commander, and his famed Panzer Division, supposedly the best, most experienced military unit on the planet at this point in time, are charging towards Allied forces. The best place to do that is going to be in a 2-mile gap in the Atlas mountain chain known as the Kasserine Pass. If they can hold him in this 2-mile gap in this narrow choke point, they might be able to stop him. The problem is the 9th Infantry Division is over 700 miles away, and Erwin Rommel is beelining it straight towards them. So in a hurry, they pack their shit up, 411 vehicles and artillery pieces, and 2,000 men travel 777 miles in 3 days. Buh! 777 miles isn't that far to travel in 3 days. Buh! Yeah, if we're talking about you hopping on the interstate in your car, sure, but this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about being in the desert of North Africa. There's no gas stations. They got to bring all their own food, all their own water, figure out how to get enough gas. They got to figure out how to move 2,000 dudes with 400 vehicles, 777 miles through the desert of North Africa in 3 days. Okay, yes, it's impressive. They are traveling all day and all night for 3 days straight, and they make it to Kasserine Pass before Rommel and his division. Matt Urban and the 60th Infantry Regiment are held up at a smaller pass within the Kasserine Pass known as McNassie Pass, and it is just wide enough for a single tank to get through. Literally one road with cliffs on either side. They get their 155mm howitzers leveled in a crossfire right at the pass, and as soon as a German Panzer tank comes rolling through, they They blow that thing up. They blow the tank up right behind it, completely blocking the pass. Now nothing can get through. Then there's kind of a lull in the battle. Matt Urban's up at a vantage point with binoculars trying to see what's going on, and after a couple of hours, he sees what appears to be a sandstorm approaching his direction from where the Nazis are.
Oh my God.
As it gets closer, he realizes that's not a sandstorm. The Nazis are bringing in their heavy artillery, 240 millimeter cannons. At which point, Urban's artillery guy informs him, those guns have like twice the range of anything we've got. They're going to be able to hit us way before we're going to be able to hit them. Now some of the men are kind of shitting themselves because this is, for all intents and purposes, the first big clash between the Nazis and the American forces. And it's Erwin Rommel's famous Panzer Division. The Germans have better machine guns that don't jam. Their grenades are more dangerous. Their tanks are better. Their artillery's better. It's not looking good. Despite that, Matt Urban tells his guys to calm down, dig in, we're fighting them right here. And within the hour, they start getting hit by German heavy artillery. They weather the storm. The Germans launch an attack. They repel the attack. They start hammering them with artillery again. The Germans launch another attack. They repel the attack. And this goes on for the next 72 hours straight. Matt Urban said that there wasn't a single second over the course of the next 3 days where there wasn't a shell inbound, and he was legitimately concerned that he or one of his men was going to suffocate from all of the dust that was being kicked up. They couldn't see shit.
Jeez.
Despite that, they held the pass for 72 hours straight, and then it just stopped. Eerie silence and just the ringing of the tinnitus that they all now have. Matt Urban climbs up to a vantage point with his binoculars and sees the Germans are retreating. Rommel has exhausted his ammunition and supplies and is forced to retreat. Okay, it's been like 3 straight days. The boys were hungry, they're tired, so Matt picks out a couple of people to set up guard and watch, and everybody else is just supposed to grab some food, eat, and take a nap. Matt Urban gets that going. He finally goes, gets some food for himself, sits down, starts opening up a can of sea rations when one of the guards comes running up that there's a raiding party headed their direction from behind them.
Son of a bitch.
Okay, now he's pissed. At this point, the Germans are just trying to starve him to death before they can actually shoot him. He grabs a rifle platoon, heads off to investigate. He gets over to where the supposed German raiding party is, and what he finds is a bunch of dudes in robes with Aladdin swords and like old World War I rifles looting one of his supply drops. His rifle platoon immediately opens fire, shooting some of them. The rest scatter off into the tall grass. They all disappear. Matt orders his men not to pursue them. They're clearly not a legitimate threat. It's turning into a long day. He's got the Germans trying to kill him over here. The Tuscan Raiders are behind him trying to steal all of his shit. He just wants to eat his food. He goes back. He eats some food. A couple hours later, he gets woken up by a guard again. Sir, there's a civilian approaching from behind us. And Matt's like, oh, okay. Fine. He goes out, he meets with the civilian. It's somebody that can kind of speak broken English. Basically, the village that the people that just raided his supply depot are from, some of them got shot and they want medical aid. Okay, and just like so we're all on the same page, in World War II, this is not a normal thing. This is not like Iraq, Afghanistan, where we're an occupying force. We're trying to win over hearts and minds and go hand out the kids candy and medical aid and all kinds of shit. Like, this is not a standard thing to have happen. Which is why none of Matt Urban's guys want to do this, because they think it's a trap, because obviously. Despite that, Matt Urban decides they're going to go do it. So he grabs some medics, grabs a rifle platoon, they head off to this village, and they patch up everybody that they can that got shot. Get that done, head back to the pass where their base is, and they're there for about an hour, and then the guard comes running up again. Sir, there's another civilian approaching. They go out there, and it is just this one singular Jeep hauling ass straight towards them. Matt grabs a bunch of guys with guns, tells them to hide in the tall grass, be ready for anything. He's got 2 guards with him. He's standing in the middle of the road as this Jeep comes screaming up. As it approaches, he sees what appears to be like a sultan, like a king. The dude's got all the fancy robes on. He's got this big ass gold chain with a massive gold pendant, and the Jeep rolls up and stops, and in broken English asks who's in charge. At this point, Matt's thinking, okay, this is somebody important. This is like the king or something, and I've just committed an international incident. So he's like, I'm in charge, sir, Lieutenant Urban. The Sultan dude then gets this big, enormous smile showing off his gold teeth and says, and I quote, "Thank you, you killed a bad man. Thieves no good." The Jeep then does a big U-turn and drives off the other direction where they came from. All of his guys come out of the tall grass, laughing and joking, imitating the Sultan dude. And Matt Urban's just standing there like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is the weirdest day ever. I'm going to bed. Matt Urban and the rest of the 9th Infantry Division are headed further into Tunisia, and while they're making their way there, they come across a clan of Gomieres. Now, Gomieres, from what I understand, is Arabic for the phrase irregular soldier. Basically, they're badass guerrilla fighters that are very reminiscent of Gurkhas. They're known for carrying big-ass scary blades, and they're known for having the same exact legend that Gurkhas have, that if they draw their blade, they have to draw blood. So if there's no enemy to kill, they'll cut their finger, because it's just like part of the superstition. Every time you draw your weapon, it has to draw blood. They're Moroccans that are working for the French and usually only carry blades into combat. And the Germans are kind of terrified of them because they're renowned for sneaking into German camps at night, slitting a bunch of people's throats, and overall just committing a bunch of heinous war crimes.
I mean, they were stark, raving, mad, crazy, nuts. Didn't have no guns, but boy, they had the knives. And when they first went in, they paid them by the ear. 2 cents an ear.
But hey, they're on our side, so Matt Urban wants to go say hi. He figures they've been operating in this area, maybe they know something that he doesn't. So he goes up to him, finds one that kind of speaks broken English, and just kind of asks him like, Germans? And the guy just like frantically nods his head yes, and he goes, where? How many? And the guy just says, come.
Hey, Jim.
Not now, Toby, my God.
Jesus. Get the hell out of here, idiot.
And he takes off, so Matt Urban follows him by himself. And Matt Urban is struggling to keep up, which is impressive because Matt Urban is a track star, and this Gumier is just sprinting through this rugged, mountainous terrain without making a single sound. And this goes on for miles, and then finally the Gumier just stops, and Matt Urban's like, catches up to the guy, and he's like, what's going on? And the guy just points, and off in the distance, there's a 8x12 cement building out in the middle of the desert. And Matt Urban is like, what the fuck is that? And turns around to talk to the Gomier, and the guy's just gone. So Matt Urban turns his attention back to the cement building out in the middle of nowhere, and he just like kind of watches it for a little while, and then he sees that there's German patrols guarding it, so obviously it's something important. He better go investigate. So he starts low crawling, moving as little as possible, excruciatingly slow, covering ground. And as he gets closer and closer, he starts seeing all kinds of wires running into this cement building. And that's when he realizes, oh shit, this is Rommel's entire division's communications hub. He keeps working his way closer and closer to the building. And then eventually the sun's starting to go down, and the Germans that are on patrol all sit down and start eating their dinner. This is his chance. He sneaks up to the cement enclosure, pulls a pin on his grenade, opens the door, throws it inside, shuts the door, grenade explodes, pops back inside the door, shoots both the radio operators with his Colt 45, then throws another grenade right at the radio equipment and takes off fucking running. The Germans start chasing him. They're shooting at him. One of them throws one of their big ass stick grenades near enough to him to knock him off of his feet, takes shrapnel in his right hand, hops back up and keeps sprinting, says it's the fastest he's ever run in his entire life. Makes it to within 100 yards of his own lines, and then his own guys start shooting at him with machine guns. He runs and dives into a depression and like has a white handkerchief and is like waving it over the top, and one of the guys that's shooting at him is like, who goes there? And he's like, it's Urban, stop fucking shooting at me. So he makes it back to his lines, reports to his captain, explains to the captain what happened, and the captain is like, I don't know whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. The war is hard enough without you showing off constantly. You're fucking taking rowboats into amphibious landings. You're running off with Moroccan assassins to take out Rommel's communication centers by yourself. We're not going to talk about this. Go to the med tent, get your hand fixed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Urban and his guys continue further into Tunisia, heading north, and the terrain kind of shifts. It goes from, being a desert to being this like arid middle ground, and then it turns into this dense, arid forest type shit. It's just thick, dry brush everywhere. And in this new terrain, they come up to a mountain with a German stronghold on top that apparently has been fighting back the British for months. It's a steep terrain. There's brush everywhere. They've got machine gun emplacements up top inside of these stone bunkers. It's impenetrable.
I've heard that before.
But hey, somebody's got to go up there and take it out. And the chain of command at the 9th Infantry Division is like, I've got just the guy. Matt Urban, you want to show off? Go get him. Matt Urban grabs his platoon and he decides that he's going to attack where the enemy's going to expect it the least. He's going to shuttle his men single file up the steepest part of this mountain. Matt Urban leads his platoon through all of this thick brush, single file, gets everybody as close as possible before the jungle starts to clear out. And once they get as close as that point, they have this stopping point. They downgrade all their equipment. They get rid of their canteens. They drop their packs. They fix bayonets on their rifles, and they start grabbing dirt, smearing it on their face. They're about to have a raiding party. They start creeping up closer and closer on the German position. And when they get within eyesight, Matt Urban realizes they have no idea that they're coming. The Germans are all just sitting around goofing off. Perfect. They continue to creep forward. They get right up to this waist-high stone wall surrounding this little encampment of Germans in their fortified position, and Matt Urban pulls out his Colt 45 in one hand and a flare gun in the other.
Time to make the chimmy fucking chongas.
Matt Urban pops up, shoots a flare directly into the machine gun emplacement that would open fire on his men, then reloads, shoots another flare into that machine gun emplacement, hops the wall with all of his men, and they charge. The Germans are caught completely off guard and have to retreat from their positions. They run, they occupy the bunkers with the machine guns, they turn the guns around and open fire on the fleeing Germans as they see off in the distance that the Germans have some captured Allied POWs that they begin executing. They then proceed to go capture those Germans and line them up to return the favor. The Nazi officer is then screaming, "You can't do this, it's against the Geneva Treaty," at which point he's basically told, "So was what you just did. I don't give a shit."
Yeah.
They line the Germans up, point guns at him, and his men are just waiting for Matt to give the order. They want him to do it. Like, dude, give me the order. This is bullshit. They just killed a bunch of our guys. Let's return the favor. And Matt, he can't do it. They finish taking the position and escort the German prisoners back to headquarters.
Dang.
After this, they continue to advance further into Tunisia, and what's going on at this point during the campaign is the Allied forces have basically taken over the entire country, but the Germans are still held out on top of like hills and mountains in these super strong fortified positions, and the Allied forces have just kind of gone around them for now. They've taken over the whole country, and now it's time to double back and clear them out. And Matt Urban's battalion has been tasked with going and taking out a fortified German position known as Hill 409. So Matt Urban's unit, the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment of the 9th Infantry Division, makes their way to Hill 409. Once they get fairly close, Matt Urban orders the rest of his men to rest. He grabs a couple of his best guys and he goes up on a scouting mission to assess the situation. They get up there close enough and Matt Urban realizes that there's an entire German regiment on top of Hill 409, which is about 2 to 3 times bigger than a battalion.
I like those odds.
Just so we're all on the same page and we know what that means, they are outnumbered at least 2 to 1. They'll be fighting uphill into fortified machine gun positions. Not looking that great, but also Matt Urban's the main character and he's got plot armor, so we're gonna fucking run. But he's gonna need a pretty good plan, so he stays there just watching what the Germans are up to, and he notices right around lunchtime at noon, all of the Germans leave their fortified machine gun positions, eat lunch, and then after lunch, a new group of Germans switch out and they go occupy the machine gun positions. That's the plan. They're going to rush those fortified machine gun positions right when they are unoccupied by the Germans, then they're going to spin them around and use their own fortifications against them and take the hill. And the very next day, that's exactly what happens. They mow down some of the Germans with their own machine guns, but the vast majority of them retreat and escape. And that's it. Main character, good plan, makes for an easy day for a minute, because about 15 minutes later, the Germans launched a massive counterattack, and now the entire battalion is in this German fortified position, and they are now surrounded by a force 2 to 3 times larger than them, and they're fucking stuck with no way to get more supplies. They managed to repel the first German counterattack, but like I said, they're still stuck. So they just kind of hang out there, and they repel another counterattack, and then night comes, and they repel another counterattack, and then the second day, they repel multiple more German counterattacks, and they're running out of food, water, and ammunition. By the end of the second day, things are not looking good. They are going to run out of ammo and all their other supplies. They're going to get overrun. Luckily, on the morning of the third day, they managed to get a bunch of supplies airdropped in right on top of the hill. That manages to keep them in the fight. They fight the entire third day. On the morning of the fourth day, Matt Urban is woken up right at dawn as the sun is starting to illuminate the battlefield to all of his men running past him, retreating. Matt Urban jumps to his feet like, what the fuck is going on? Starts yelling at his dudes to hold their position, and then off in the distance, he hears in perfect English somebody yelling for retreat, so he takes off that direction. It's early morning, it's barely light out, it's super foggy up on this hill, he can barely see 6 feet in front of him. And he's just following the sound of this voice in perfect English yelling, "Retreat, we're being overrun." As he closes in on this voice calling for retreat, somehow in the fog, he had circled around behind this guy, and as he gets closer, he sees that it's a German uniform yelling in perfect English, ordering people to retreat, tricking the Americans.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Now you die.
Matt Urban runs up behind this guy, pulls out his trench knife, stabs him in the neck to shut him up immediately, and thinking fast, I don't know if it was luck or if he actually did this on purpose, but he grabs the German's burp gun and shoots the 2 guys that were with him. And the reason that this is genius is because it totally saves him and his men, because by using the German gun, which sounds significantly different than the American Thompson, the Germans know that, the Americans know that, it gives all of the Americans warning of like, hey, here's where the Germans are, they're coming from this this direction. In addition to that, all the German forces behind him now think that he's German, so they're not going to open fire on him. Which really comes in handy as an entire German rifle squad comes running through the fog towards him, thinking that their buddy needs backup, and he turns the burp gun back around and lights them up too. Matt then runs back to his guys through the fog, gets everybody back into their fighting positions as they repel the Germans' last all-out counterattack, where they threw everything they had at the Americans. But because of Matt Urban's actions, they managed to hold out, and after that one single counterattack, they counted 116 dead Nazis on the hill. And that was it. The Germans continued retreating. They were gone. The hill is secured. For this battle, Matt Urban's battalion would receive a Distinguished Unit citation, which is a huge deal, and shortly after that, the Tunisia campaign would come to an end, with Axis forces surrendering in the area on May 13th, 1943.
Dang.
From here, Matt Urban and his guys get some R&R, then they're told to board a boat to places unknown yet again. They make their way there. They end up off the coast of Sicily, off the city of Palermo. While there, his ship gets attacked by German Stuka dive bombers, and the first pass ends up killing a guy on the anti-aircraft gun that is closest to Matt Urban. Matt Urban runs over, mans the anti-aircraft gun, and shoots down the next Stuka dive bomber that tries to make a pass at him. And then the attack's over, and he just goes about his business, just complete main character energy like it was no big deal.
What a day, what a day.
The next morning, they depart the ship, and they are essentially told, the enemy's that way. Go get them until you hit the ocean and we've taken over the entire island. No tanks, no vehicles, no nothing. Just walk your happy ass from one end of the island to the other and kill all the bad guys that you find. So they take off road marching. Matt Urban is at the front of his battalion with all of his men walking behind him on the road. Obviously, they're doing most of their road marching like early in the morning and kind of later in the day to avoid the heat. And that's when it gets kind of cold. So at some point, Matt Urban takes to having a wool blanket. He throws that over his helmet, over his shoulders like a cloak, and he's just leading his troops into battle. And the men start to joke that the entire 9th Infantry Division is being led by a ghost. And this is where the nickname Matt Urban, the Ghost, first originates. Matt Urban and the 9th Infantry Division have fought the French, they fought the Germans, and now they're fighting the Italians. Or at least they're trying to, because the Italians at this point in the war, they're not very well trained, they're not very well equipped, and they do not have very high morale. So as soon as they see the Americans coming, every time they approach a village that has enemy soldiers in it, by the time they actually reach the village, the enemy soldiers have already packed their shit up and retreated. And this happens pretty much the entire time they're in Sicily. They walk from sea to shining sea and see almost no combat. After that, they're told to board a boat. They get shipped off to England to prepare for D-Day. Once they get over to England, there's a lot of R&R going on, there's a lot of training going on, but Matt Urban in particular resumes his role as the morale officer and is told to organize a massive morale boxing event for the entire 7th Corps of the Army. They want it to be a big deal. They've got Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, the world heavyweight boxing champion coming through. He's going to be willing to box some of the soldiers. It's just supposed to be a big morale event. So he resumes his role as a boxing trainer. He's getting some dudes trained up, and then at night, he's going out on the town having a good time. One night, he goes out to a circus and he meets an attractive woman that he describes as a shapely brunette. Her name is Marie Brown, and he would later find out that she had won Miss England a couple years prior. They drink and hang out all night, and as the night comes to an end, Matt Urban decides to be a gentleman and make sure that she gets home okay, which he agreed to before he realizes that it was a 20-mile train ride to a different town, but he goes anyways. Gets her all the way home to the front doorstep, gives her a kiss, and then turns around to leave, at which point Miss England tells him, "That was the last train for the night. There's not going to be another one till the morning. You're going to have to stay here." Darn it. At this point, his hopes aren't very high. He's thinking he's going to be sleeping on the couch, which is fine. No big deal. She walks him upstairs to the guest bedroom, which is extremely nice in this very nice house. And he takes a bath, goes, lays down, and it's like the peak of luxury. Dude's been sleeping out in the fields in Africa and in Sicily. He just got to have a bath, and now he's sleeping in an actual bed. This is fantastic. Right as he's about to go asleep, Miss England comes and gets in bed with him. In Matt Urban's own words, and I quote, "I was a perfect gentleman, and each person will have to interpret that for themselves." All right, fine. I'll interpret it. Next morning, Matt Urban wakes up to a knock on the door. He scrambles, starts getting his clothes on like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. It's an angry husband. It's an angry father with a shotgun. Whatever's on the other side of that door is not good. He runs over to the window, fully prepared to jump out of a 2nd-story building. Another gorgeous woman walks through the door, and he's like, okay, it's her sister. It's cool. Everything's fine. And then Miss England on the bed says, "Good morning, Mom." He opens the window and starts putting one leg out, getting ready to jump. And they look at him like he's crazy, and he now realizes that Mom has just brought them breakfast in bed. So from here, he finishes breakfast, heads back to base, and continues training boxing and getting ready for this big boxing event. Now, the cool part about this boxing event, at least to me, is that it's for 7th Corps, and another member of 7th Corps is Lafayette Poole, aka War Daddy, the greatest American tanker of all time. This is the guy that the movie Fury is based on. I've already done a full video on him, and in that video, I talk about how when he was in England, right around this time period, he had a boxing match with Joe Louis, aka the Brown Bomber, the world heavyweight champ. Now, I can't tell you with absolute 100% certainty, there could have been multiple events, but I think it's pretty likely that Matt Urban actually scheduled and organized the event where Lafayette Poole, War Daddy, boxed Joe Louis, which honestly has nothing to do with the overall story, but it is really cool to see my videos overlap, and just the idea that Matt Urban at some point was coaching Lafayette Poole at boxing is just awesome. After the boxing morale event, they start training for an amphibious landing. Matt gets promoted to captain. He also gets caught up on awards. He gets awarded a Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Hearts, all kinds of stuff. From here, they get packed up and shipped off to Normandy, where they make their landing on Utah Beach. Just so we're on the same page, this is not like D-Day. They were not the initial wave of the attack on Normandy. That was on June 6th. They hit Utah Beach on June 11th, 5 days later. So by the time they hit Utah Beach, it's clear the fighting has moved further inland. They land on Utah Beach, and they actually have to follow like roped off sections where they've cleared small pathways through minefields and German objectives. From here, they make their way into hedgerow country. They get to the front lines and they start clearing fields, hedgerow after hedgerow, and eventually they come up against German resistance, and these Germans have 2 Panzer tanks, and they don't have any tanks.
That's not good.
Despite that, Matt Urban and his guys dig in and start fighting. They're picking off the German infantry that's trying to use the tanks as cover, but the machine guns on top of the German tanks are wreaking havoc on his men. As the battle rages on, his men are starting to take casualties, and Matt Urban remembers he's the main character, and if anybody's gonna do some gangster shit, it's gonna have to be him, at which point he goes to his men, grabs a bazooka, runs into enemy machine gun fire, and fires the bazooka at one of the tanks, scoring a direct hit, knocking it out. He then reloads the bazooka and fires it at the second tank, scoring another direct hit, knocking out 2 German Panzer tanks by himself in a matter of like a minute. And as soon as that second tank is hit, German reinforcements arrive with another Panzer tank that drives through one of the hedgerows, and it starts opening fire on Matt Urban's men again, so he starts reloading his bazooka as the German turret is moving towards him, and it stops right at him. Matt Urban has enough time to think in his head, oh shit, as he goes to throw the bazooka down to take cover, and before he can even let go of the bazooka, the gun fires, the round impacts immediately directly in front of his feet as he is yeeted into the hedgerow behind him. He comes to in the hedgerow right where he landed with medics working on him. He has a massive chunk of his calf missing as the medics are about to administer morphine and they're trying to get other people to litter bear him back to the ship.
Here's your ninepence. I'm not dead.
Yeah. He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is. I'm not.
Matt Urban then orders the medics to not give him morphine and just throw a tourniquet on it because he's fucking staying until they win. Right around then, the litter bearers show up as they're supposed to take him back to the hospital ship. Matt Urban climbs on the litter and then, rather than go back to the hospital ship, has them escort him around the battlefield, issuing orders to his men. And this goes on until they repel that wave of Germans, and eventually the battalion surgeon, the head medic for the entire battalion, also an officer that outranks Captain Urban, has to go to Urban and order him to go to the aid station. So they get him back to the beach at a field hospital. 2 surgeons start working on him. They don't have any anesthesia. All he has is a local anesthetic. He is wide awake as 2 surgeons are cutting out necrotic tissue from what used to be his leg. The surgeons laugh. He's done his job as a morale officer. He's keeping morale high. Eventually he asks the surgeons, okay, how much longer is this going to take so I can get back to my men? And the surgeons are like, dude, you might lose your entire leg. You're done here. You're not going back to the front.
You serious?
From here, Matt Urban gets sent back to a hospital in England. From here, he's in the hospital, he's recovering. It's looking like he's going to get to keep his leg, but it's still pretty jacked up. And then after a couple of weeks, more reports start coming in that the fighting in Normandy is intense and his unit is taking a lot of casualties. About a week after that, some of those casualties start making it to the same hospital that Matt Urban's at. And on one hand, he's happy to see his guys, but on the other hand, he's getting reports of all the guys that also didn't make it, and maybe they would have if he was there with them. And he decides that he needs to go back. So he goes, he talks to the chain of command, he tells them he wants to go back, and they're like, no, Absolutely not. If that leg gets infected, you're going to lose it, and it's looking like you're going to keep it now. You're not going back into combat. But Matt Urban isn't taking no for an answer. His boys need him. He's got to figure out a way to get back to Normandy across the English Channel. So he's sitting outside this hospital on a park bench, and then he sees his way of getting back to Normandy. There's a platoon of 40 guys lined up in formation. The formation looks horrible. Their uniforms look horrible. It's a giant pile of shitbags. And Matt Urban goes and talks to the officer leading them, and he's like, what is this? Who are these guys? Urban then finds out that this platoon of men is unaffectionately nicknamed the Dirty 40, and basically it's 40 shitbags that had all tried to dodge the draft or had faked an injury, basically trying to do anything they could to not get shipped off to combat, and now they've essentially just been thrown at this hospital to do grunt work and labor because nobody trusts them to actually do anything important. Basically, nobody wants to deal with them. The officer in charge is just babysitting them, and they're a giant pain in the ass. So Matt Urban offers to take over. He says that he'll start training them. He's got a lot of combat experience. He's a good officer. He's a leader. Let me take it over. I just need something constructive to do. I'm going nuts sitting in my hospital bed all day. The officer is like, yeah, okay, sure, take him. I don't want him. Whatever. For the next couple of weeks, Matt Urban whips these guys into shape the best that he can. He's not exactly working with the cream of the crop, but he gets them to the point where they're kind of looking like they're soldiers and convinces the chain of command that this platoon is ready to go see combat in Normandy. At which point Urban is like, look, I know I can't be their officer when they're in theater, but I would at least like to travel to Normandy with them and hand them off to the officer that's taking over. And the chain of command lets him do it. So Matt Urban, with a cane and 40 fuck-ups, board a ship, cross the English Channel, make it over to Normandy. He lands on Utah Beach again a second time. He hands off the Dirty 40 to the officer that's expecting them, at which point he's supposed to go get back on the ship and go back to the hospital. But he wanders over to a field medical station where he finds the newest, greenest ambulance driver he can find and orders him to drive him to the front lines where his battalion is. He gets dropped off at the front lines in an active battle. Urban doesn't realize this at the time, but he has just been dropped off right in the middle of Operation Cobra, which happened after Normandy. Basically, the Allied strategy was to back up a little bit and then carpet bomb the ever-living shit out of the Germans. The Germans in this sector that his men are fighting, once they backed up to allow for the carpet bombing, ran up and occupied the fortified positions that they had just had and weathered the storm of the bombing. And now they're using those fortified positions against them. Matt comes hobbling up in a cane, gets into a depression with some men. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. The Germans are shooting at them, and he's like, who's in charge? Nobody knows who's in charge. Apparently the company commander has been killed. At this point, Matt Urban, with his cane, is like, I guess I'm in charge. Starts issuing orders to his men to spread out so they don't get taken out by a single mortar, and starts getting everything going. As he kind of gets his footing and evaluates what's going on, they had 3 tanks that were supporting this company. 2 of them have been knocked out, and the other one is kind of sitting in a no man's land. It's operable, but nobody's manning it right now. They've got to get to that tank, get it up and running, and start using it for suppressing fire on these German machine gun nests. Matt Urban sends 2 guys out to the tank to man it. Both of them wind up getting mowed down, at which point Matt Urban is like, I guess I'm doing it. He then proceeds to hobble run through German machine gun fire, makes it to the tank, climbs on top of it to the 50 caliber machine gun, and starts laying down suppressing fire, giving enough cover for a tank commander to run up and get inside the tank. The tank then starts moving towards the Germans, providing cover and suppressing fire as the entire battalion starts moving with him, and they crush the Germans. Matt Urban showed up injured to a unit that was in shambles and turned the entire tide of the battle in a matter of minutes. One of the platoon sergeants that was there that day, that had been a replacement troop that had come in after Matt Urban had already been shipped to the hospital, had this to say, quote, one of the craziest officers suddenly appeared before us, yelling like a madman and waving a gun in his hand. He was probably a replacement, never in combat before. He got us on our feet, though, and gave us our confidence back and saved our lives. Another platoon sergeant had this to say, quote, Urban moved forward, and damned if the U.S. Army didn't move forward also. He bellied up to the tank and amid heavy gunfire, scrambled aboard and manned the machine gun. The driver took heart with Urban aboard, the tank roared forward, and Urban tore the hillside apart with that gun. Because of this, his battalion commander writes him up for the Medal of Honor and ships off the paperwork. Urban stays with his men as they continue advancing further into enemy territory. About a week later, on August 2nd, he takes shrapnel to his chest and is told that he needs to go back to the hospital. He promptly refuses and stays in the fight anyways. 4 days after that, on August 6th, his battalion commander is wounded in combat and he's shipped off. And now Urban is the commander of the battalion.
Dang. Okay.
From here, Urban leads the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment into combat, and they are taking town after town after town. And again, on August 15th, he's wounded and refuses to get medevaced. And this is where his nickname of the Ghost goes from a running joke that started back in Sicily to an actual badass nickname, because he is a legend among his men. This dude got shot by a tank, survived, got sent to a hospital in England, escaped the hospital, made it back to the front lines, saved their ass in the middle of battle, and has been injured 2 more times and refused medevac. He's unkillable. He might actually be dead, and he is a ghost leading them into combat.
Like Baba Yaga.
Under Matt Urban's leadership, the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment kind of becomes known as the problem solvers for the 9th Infantry Division. Whatever the toughest mission is, that's who they're giving it to. And on September 2nd, 1944, that tough assignment was to take out Philippeville, where the Germans had concentrated all their defenses. If they can take out Philippeville and clear out the Germans, they'll have a direct shot at the Meuse River. Now, the problem is that the 9th Infantry Division is not in control of that sector, so the 9th Infantry Division loans out the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment to a different division to have them go clear out Philippeville. So when Matt Urban and his battalion show up, they are told by this new chain of command to basically run into the town, into enemy gunfire, and just take it over. No artillery support, no air support, no backup, nothing.
Good day, sir.
Now, why would they do that? I'm not quite 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident it's because this is the point of the war where now it's not a question of is America going to win? It's a question of how soon is America going to win? And a lot of high-ranking officers want to be the first guy into Germany. They want to be the first person to do this, the first person to do that. Basically, they want to overachieve to, win a medal or something. And in doing so, a lot of the time they put their men on the ground at an increased risk so they can make themselves look good. And I think that's what's going on here. Regardless, Matt Urban attempts to follow orders. He approaches the town, and as they approach, they get hit with a humongous artillery barrage from the Germans. Matt Urban orders his men to pull back out of artillery range, and then radios back to them like, hey, we're not going to be able to do this without artillery support or air support or something. It's not possible. We're going to get decimated before we even make it into the town. The colonel in charge of this operation then tells Matt Urban, that's not available right now. Just push into the town. Again, I'm assuming because the artillery hasn't caught up and they're outrunning supply lines and they're outrunning all their logistical support because they're pushing further in as fast as possible, trying to make the officers look good. Matt Urban then tells them, we'll wait for the artillery support. I'm not going to go in there and get all my men killed for no reason. And the colonel then threatens to have him court-martialed and calls him a coward.
Okay.
To which Matt Urban replies, do whatever you got to do. I'm not sending my guys in there to die. So what the colonel does is he calls up all the new reinforcement troops from the rear that just got here from America that have not seen combat and orders them to march past Matt Urban's unit and straight into the town. And to nobody's surprise, not only do they not take the town, they don't even make it to the town because they get lit up by German artillery. They take so many casualties, in fact, that night, the general in charge of that colonel who's in charge of Matt Urban decides to have a meeting with the two of them and a bunch of other officers to come up with a plan on how they're going to take this town. The colonel explains to the general he thinks that they should push in right now with everything that they have, and Matt Urban says, we're going to get absolutely destroyed by German artillery. We need you to get artillery up here to silence the German artillery, and then I will take my regiment in there and we will clear out the town. It's what we do. The general immediately sides with Matt Urban, says he's going to get artillery moved in there first thing in the morning, at which point the colonel throws a bitch fit telling the general that this man is a coward and he should be court-martialed and he doesn't know what he's talking about. The general then snaps at the colonel. I'm paraphrasing, but roughly what he says is, if he had followed your orders yesterday, him and all of his men would be dead. That man is Matt Urban. I specifically requested him and his unit from the 9th Infantry Division come help us with this because they're one of the best units in the entire fucking war. That man signed himself out of the hospital and saved his unit at St. Lo and was instrumental in spearheading the entire breakout. He then turns back to Urban, who's shocked that this general even knows him by name, and says, you're gonna have whatever you need first thing in the morning. Go get it done.
I bet somebody feels pretty stupid right now.
Matt Urban leaves the meeting like, all right, I got what we need. Let's go figure out what we're up against. So he grabs 2 NCOs. This is like 11 o'clock at night on September 2nd, and they sneak up to the enemy position. They kill several guards with garrote wire to figure out what the enemy has for defenses. After they take out the guards, they get eyes on the enemy position. It looks like there's an entire German regiment there. They've got tanks, they've got machine gun nests, it's gonna be a fight. From here, they make it back to their lines. Matt Urban sets up the battle plan, gets a couple of hours of sleep, wakes up at 4 a.m. on September 3rd, and gets all of his men ready and into position, ready to launch this attack, and they wait until 5 a.m. when the humongous artillery barrage from the Americans hits to silence the German artillery. They storm the town. It's going as good as it can. Obviously, they're taking casualties, running into German machine gun fire, but it's going as well as you could possibly expect. As they advance further into this town, they get pinned down by German machine gun fire, at which point Matt Urban decides he's going to do Matt Urban things and rushes the German machine gun nest, throws a grenade into it, blows it up, runs to the next one, hucks a second grenade into it, and then feels like he got hit in the neck by a fucking sledgehammer and drops to the ground. He hears the grenade go off and the gun goes silent, and then he wakes up with medics sitting over him, and it's not just any medic, it's the battalion surgeon. He starts to come to a little bit more. He's wet, covered in a ton of his own blood, and he can't move, not because he's physically unable to, but because one of his soldiers has both of his thumbs pressed into the bullet hole in his neck, trying to stop the bleeding as the surgeon is trying to work on him. So Matt Urban's laying there trying not to move, and then the priest from the battalion winds up making it there, and Matt Urban remembers the priest asking the doctor, is he gonna make it? And the doctor looks over to the priest and just shakes his head no. Matt Urban hears this. He thinks he's going to die. All of the men around hear this. They think that their fearless leader, the unkillable ghost, has just been killed. And the last time they see him, he's getting read his last rites on the battlefield by that priest before being loaded up onto the hood of a Jeep and driven to the rear. Matt Urban survives and actually makes it to the aid station somehow, and once he gets there, whether he realizes it or not, he is triaged, meaning he is sorted into a category of how severe his wounds are, which is going to determine how quick he gets treatment. There's basically 4 categories. There's urgent, which means this guy can survive, but we need to get him to surgery right now. He's on the next ambulance out of here to an operating room or to a hospital. Then there's delayed, which means this guy's critically wounded. He needs surgery. He needs better care that we can't give him here, but he's stable for the moment. If somebody else needs that ambulance more, take it. Then there's minimal, which is like walking wounded. This guy's messed up. He needs care. He can't go back into battle. We need to get him to the hospital, but he's stable. He's fine to hang out here for a while. And then there's the 4th category that Matt Urban gets sorted into, which is expectant, which means his wounds are so bad that he's going to die. There's nothing anyone can do for him. So we're just not going to waste space on the transport, and we're going to try to help people that have a chance at surviving. So he is basically shoved into the corner, receives the minimum amount of care, basically just trying to comfort him until he dies. But he doesn't die. He lays there for 2 days with a hole in his neck, and eventually it gets to the point where he gets so thirsty, he's getting all his fluids from IVs, but that doesn't do much to actually, quench your thirst in your throat, where he starts writing on a piece of paper asking the nurses for water. After asking multiple times, they eventually come up with like a cup of water and a teaspoon and pour a teaspoon of water into his throat, which sends him into a coughing fit for what seems like forever and is extremely painful. All right, no more of that. He then eventually winds up getting transported to a hospital back in England again. Once he gets there, he's evaluated by the doctor that's kind of his new primary care guy. And, he's writing on paper to communicate because his vocal cords are completely shot. And he basically tells the doctor that he can't drink, but he's super thirsty. He tells the doctor they tried giving him a little bit of water with a teaspoon, sends him into a coughing fit. It's extremely painful. It just is a shitty situation. The doctor looks over to the nurse and is like, go in my office, 3rd drawer down in my desk, there's a bottle of bourbon and a shot glass. Bring it here. He then proceeds to pour Matt Urban a shot and tells him to drink it in 1 gulp. Matt Urban's like, okay, you're the doctor, fuck it, expecting this to hurt extremely bad, takes a shot, goes right down like it was nothing. Matt Urban's shocked. The doctor then explains to him, yeah, trickling water down your throat 1 little teaspoon at a time would make anybody cough, neck wound or not. Your vocal cords are shot. You might never talk again, but you can at least eat and swallow.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
From here, he's up and walking within a couple of days, and then within a week, he's requesting to go back to combat by writing it down on a sheet of paper, saying that he can still lead his troops by writing the commands. To which he is told, absolutely fucking not. So he waits for a couple of days and then requests 5 days of leave to go up to Scotland to, go sightseeing or whatever for his personal morale. And they give it to him. He then proceeds to snag a ride on a cargo plane across the English Channel and then hitchhike all the way into Germany where his men are. He gets to where his troops are at and he steps out of the Jeep, and the first thing anybody says as they're all standing there with their jaws on the floor is, holy shit, he really is a ghost.
What the hell are you? No!
From here, it's a party. All the boys are pumped. They're super excited that their leader actually survived. He really is the unkillable ghost that they all thought he was. From here, Matt Urban hangs out with the boys for a couple of days, and they're getting ready to mobilize again to go back into Germany and finish this war, and Matt Urban is straight up ready to go with them. He's ready to write orders down on a sheet of paper and get back into combat. The chain of command, on the other hand, is absolutely not willing to let that happen, and they ship him back to the hospital, and then he gets shipped back home to America. And at a glance, it might appear like him escaping from the hospital, making it all the way to Germany was a waste of his time, but it wasn't. It was actually extremely important. Because you got to remember, Matt Urban's the morale officer. He is in charge of making sure the men are motivated to fight. And Matt Urban is really living up to his role as morale officer because he's done incredible things for their morale, because there's nothing that could be more devastating to a combat unit than seeing their star guy, their best player, the man that's fearless, that they follow into battle, that they're trusting to get them back alive. To see him die in combat on the field is devastating, because every single dude is now thinking, Matt Urban was better than me. I was going to follow that guy anywhere. And if they killed him, what chance do I have? To have that on your mind for the next 2 weeks, and then to have a Jeep pull up and to see that guy step out, literally coming back from the fucking dead, does unspeakable things to your motivation and your outlook on how this is going to go. Matt Urban makes it back to England, and he is promptly court-martialed because apparently while he was gone for 14 days on 5 days of leave, they had scheduled his award ceremony for his Silver Star, and guess who didn't show up? Matt Urban. The military tribunal takes one look at Matt Urban's service record and what happened and goes, yeah, he's not getting in trouble at all. Case dismissed. Also, you're promoted to lieutenant colonel. From here, Matt heads back home to America, winds up retiring shortly afterward, goes back home to Buffalo, winds up moving to Holland, Michigan. Somewhere along the way, he regained his voice, although it is pretty hoarse for the rest of his life. He then spent the rest of his life being a youth athletic coach, working with kids. He wound up being a coach to a boxer known as Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali, at one point. And that's it. He just lived out the rest of his life as a normal guy after being one of the biggest badasses on the entire planet. And then in the late 1970s, he caught up with some of his friends from the military, and they asked if he ever got that Medal of Honor that he was recommended for. And he said no. Doesn't really know what happened to it, didn't really care, wasn't doing it for the medals anyways. Some of his friends then wrote into the government asking them to correct this oversight, and they dug into it. But the problem is that a couple years prior in 1973, there was a major fire at the National Archives, and most of the documentation from World War II had been destroyed. And almost all of it from the 9th Infantry Division was destroyed. All of it except for literally one box of documents was recovered. And in that box was the recommendation from his now deceased battalion commander recommending him for the Medal of Honor. This, combined with testimony from some of the surviving members of his unit, would lead to him ultimately getting the Medal of Honor in 1980. And with that, he is then put into contention for the title of the most decorated soldier of World War II, comparable only to Audie Murphy. And that is the story of Matt Urban, one of the greatest infantry officers in American history. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is to buy some merch, maybe drink some Echelon. Links for both of those are over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. This guy is probably one of the most horrifically underrated and underpublicized people I've ever covered.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Trying to be a model. I think being a model, dress up. Here we had the community center on the other side of the tracks, you know. We had all races, all colors. And just tremendous that I'd come in, I'd always be clean shaven, clean shirt on, trying to model for the youngsters. I'd park my convertible right in front of the place. And I think all this is what they picked up. It's a goal that, hey, when I grow up, I want to go to college. The thanks and the appreciation they give to you. I meet these kids. I make trips back home. And when I talk to them, you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their conversation. And they look up to you like they went to a father. And boy, you just can't buy that.
Wow. That unassuming man at the end there in the video, just the exploits that he's done, just those war stories, getting blown up and shot and escaping hospitals and hitchhiking back to the front line. It's just like, that is crazy. That is crazy. That is one person determined to do his bit in the war effort above and beyond. But as Nick says, you know, how much morale would that be? 2 weeks, you think, oh, well, you know, he's dead. He's definitely dead. You know, he's not coming back. And then turn up in a Jeep and it'd just be like, what in the hell is going on? You know, he really is a ghost. You know, that was a crazy story. You know, we always get these crazy stories. I've never heard of him before. I don't know how popular and how well known he is in America. Nick was obviously, you know, hinting at the fact that he's not that well known. It's just these stories that we're uncovering, you know, especially through mediums like Nick's storytelling. And it's just these stories that should never die. These heroic men and women, I must say, of these wars that we just never hear about. It is just these efforts above and beyond. It's just crazy. Superhuman efforts. Man, to come back from that, just getting your last rites, and it's just, crazy stuff too. And as I said, you know, we see him at the end there in the video, that video, it just looks so unassuming. So unassuming. I don't know if any of those youngsters that were in his program even knew about his war exploits. It's just like crazy, absolutely crazy story. So let me know if you enjoyed that one, guys. Thank you very much for joining me today. Make sure you stay safe, and I'll definitely see you in the next reaction video.
Oh, you're still here? You want more content? Why don't you check out my Patreon down here? You'll get plenty more content and some exclusive videos over there too. If not, why not check out this one over here?